The true hint of if we're going to go live is that the music dies down. But that's not all. Then you hear the clack, 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 clack of Jordan's mechanical keyboard.
I'm not using a mechanical keyboard right now.
Dang, you just got a straight bonkers keyboard.
If I was using the mechanical, it would break its way through the mute.
There's no mute button that can contain it. Oh, that's hilarious. Hey, everybody. This is Hunter Talk. I'm Cole. That's Jordan. And we're here to talk 100 Thieves League of Legends.
Oh, yeah.
After another week where Prophet Cole got things right, whatever Slavic symbol I'm supposed to do, we went 1-2, Jordan. And
Hooray for you, Cole.
Yeah, and I'm the only winner here. And it was not the best feeling 1-2 we've had, I'd say.
No.
But it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the worst, right? The big question is Ryoma. Ryoma is on the team now, starting in the big boy seat.
What?
And we got our first look at how Ryoma slots into the Ssumday Guardians squad. Can you even call them Ssumday Guardians anymore?
No, you can't.
Not without Damonte. Not without a corn dog in mid lane.
Feet Ryoma, I think, is what they're now called, known as. Just gets longer and longer, Cole. Special guest Ryoma.
Feet Ryoma remix.
If he gets added to the squad full time, they're gonna have to come up with something different.
Well, we will pray that whatever happens will stabilize the team.
That's it.
Because that's kind of what we're doing. We're playing Russian roulette with the mid lane position at the moment.
Cole, is there a more succinct summary of the entire history of 100 Thieves League of Legends than what you just said?
No, it is the guiding principle that 100 Thieves LCS was founded on, is playing Russian roulette with the mid lane.
Oh, goodness gracious, Cole.
Well, there's a lot to dig into. For the second straight week, Jordan and I are going to abandon the traditional 100 Talk episode formula of talking about each game in succession and instead opt for Damonte got one of the anonymous subs. Perfect timing. We're gonna eschew that format in favor for just having kind of a freeform discussion of just how things are going, especially now. Obviously, for this specific week, what happened in these games is going to be pretty important because the big question is Ryoma versus Damonte. I'm not gonna lie to you, chat. I really wanted to do an episode where we didn't talk about this topic at all night, but I don't have that much troll in me. I just don't have it in me. So we are
the only way you get away with that is if it's a very clear, right? If Ryoma comes in and hard carries every game, and you're like, well, I guess it's settled. Yeah. Moving on, but it's not quite what we got, Cole. It looks as if you're powered by Rip It tonight. We forgot to mention this.
Yeah, as ever, I am tonight powered by Rip It Tribute Cherry Lime, Jordan.
And I, Cole, am powered by Rip It Sugar-Free Power.
And this is the best energy drink in the world, quite honestly. And we recommend drinking it if you haven't had one before. And if you have had one before, we recommend you drinking it anyway. Thank you to them for powering 100 Talk and what we do. And what we do, Jordan, is some armchair analysis from some silver, if that, League of Legends players. And we are ready to do it.
Let's do it, Cole. I feel prepared. I don't.
Let me ask you the one important question to start off the show, Jordan. How did Tommy do? How did Ryoma do this weekend?
Ryoma, Cole. Familiar, I'm very player with Ryoma.
That's usually my job, the word salad.
Yeah. We watched a lot of Ryoma last year, and I more or less feel like I know what to expect from him. And this is sort of it. it feels pretty similar. Games where he is unstoppable and he wins and is a big part of the reason that we win. And then other games where it's not, he can't do enough, right? And I think that for me, your question, how did Ryoma do? He didn't int our games away. Surely there are plays where he got caught in a bad position in a team fight, and that was the end of the fight. And I think that honestly, these days in League, I like to say that. I say that a lot. These days in League, it feels like there are a lot of fights these days in League, Cole, where one pick happens and then it's GG, go next, team fight, right?
Yeah.
Like give up the objective. Do you remember back in the day where you would lose a guy on Dragon and it's like, we're here, we might as well fight, because there was no soul, because it was just like Dragon stacking. So, as long as it was an Elder. Anyway, he got caught out a few times, right? He got yoinked, he got hooked. It was just sort of like, to me, it looked like somebody who was a bit rusty, who didn't quite have, like, I think when you play an academy, you don't get punished as hard on being, half a Teemo. Is that the unit they use?
Yes.
Teemo, Shroom, the Teemo, half a Teemo away from where you should optimally be standing. But, when you're playing against the quality of players that we played against this weekend, that's going to happen. You're going to get ripped out of a team fight and ended quickly. Sword Art is going to get you. And he got. So, good things and bad things. I thought the Silas was a fantastic pick, and he looked very good on it. He looked very comfortable on it. And he's kind of styling, right? Against Golden Guardians. I say that. They beat us last time we played them. So it felt much better to win in this fashion against this team that beat us last time we played them. So that, Cole, is my answer to how Ryoma did this weekend.
Yeah, I prepared my professional analysis by saying this. How did Ryoma do this weekend? Game 1, okay. Game 2, bad. Game 3, good.
That's a show, Cole. That's our show. We'll see you next week.
And that is exactly the problem. It kind of seemed like, when you look at results, at least results-based analysis, which is the only thing we're qualified to do, is after the fact say how it went. Results-based analysis wise, it kind of feels like a 1-to-1 replacement for Damonte. Obviously, there's more nuance to this. So here, just a little more detail on my okay, bad, good thing. So game 1 he was on Orianna. I thought he played okay. To me, he hung around in lane. He did get the first ganks in mid lane of the year, I believe, for us. I'm not, I mean, this is probably not literally true, but it sure feels like Damonte has not gotten any mid lane attention from Closer.
Yeah.
At least nothing like super meaningful. And it felt like in game 1, there was some sort of we've got your back in play where they were present. They weren't getting too far away from that lane. They came by, made a couple ganks. I think he roamed up once. So he had support from us, so he wasn't out totally on an island. So I think that 100T actually has a history of kind of doing this when we make player swaps. Or when we promote players, is that it seems like they try and like, hey, you're not in this by yourself kind of deal to them. And like I said, it went okay.
I want to call out really quickly though. I think this is a real LCS thing. Remember early, like the first few weeks of this split, it was like there was a gravity well in the top lane when people played against Golden Guardians.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's Niles.
Yeah.
Like we're going to send our support is going to walk from the bot lane to the top to try to pull off a gank right after the jungler's been there and the mid laner. It's like chain ganking. I think it's almost like a rite of passage. I swear, I've never heard this. I don't know that this is a thing, but I swear to you, it's a thing. It's like the welcoming party. And so we were there, and it seemed like EG was there, right? Like they were. There's a lot of focus. They picked Echo, which is, you know, a very aggressive pick designed to punish.
It's a Jizuke pick, you know?
It's a Jizuke pick. Like, they weren't going to stalemate the lane. So I think we recognize that they're going to be going for these kills. And, you know, honestly, like, you have to show up. If we didn't show up, like, Ryoma could only do so much with the Orianna kit to try to survive these repeated gank attempts and just the, you know, the continual pressure from Jizuke. And I think he did his part. And I was glad to see that the team was also there to do their part.
He even answered back. There were a couple of times where Ryoma was getting pressure in on Jizuke. And, you know, I think it was mentioned in chat that, like, playing to kind of frustrate Jizuke is one of the better strategies against EG. So the support makes sense. But I don't think it was solely about that. I think it was also about supporting Ryoma and making sure he wasn't completely just by himself in the deep end during this game. It's not like this guy doesn't have LCS experience. I mean, he was our mid laner last year. So it's not like he's completely new to the situation, but I don't think it was an abrupt or rough transition. So that's good. But we had some things that are not great too. We had one of the do nothing but watch the other team take an objective plays, which was an old special of ours from 2019. That was really sad. And more than, I'll say this too, I don't feel like I think one of the questions that 100T fans have is, will Ryoma actually be a weak point and cost us games? Right? Because it was seeming like maybe with the meta not fitting Damonte quite as well, that was starting to happen a bit. I don't know. That's kind of a strong take on it, but, you know, some semblance of that. So the question is, will the same kind of thing happen to Ryoma? I would argue that he didn't really get the chance to do that in game one because Closer was kind of doing that for us. And Closer, I thought, had probably his worst game. And a few really questionable decisions. The Skarner pick didn't go well. We all saw him ult Dr. Mundo, and the team followed him in to commit everything and get nothing. I just thought Closer was looking pretty dang bad in this game. So when that's happening, it's kind of deflecting all negative attention that's possible off of Ryoma. Interestingly enough, when we got to game 2, you heard Kobe in pregame point out, he's like, that loss against EG wasn't Ryoma's fault. He's like, I know everybody's watching Ryoma. That wasn't him playing badly yesterday. So that's sad. That's sad for me because I really have been kind of baffled by Closer seeming to fall off a cliff a little bit.
Yeah, he just looked very uncomfortable on the Skarner. And here, let me say this. Skarner was our first pick, blue side. We put everything, you know, all in on the Skarner. There's so many ways. And we just keep coming back to this point, right? Like, this is one of those picks. And it's still getting played, right? It still comes out. It's not old, but it's been around long enough now that nobody's surprised. And I don't think you need to look further than the fact that we get a Mundo and an Echo, right? 2 champs where if they get pulled, it's kind of like where, you know, the other early in the split when we played Orianna against, maybe it was against the Rel. Either way, we used some CC to disposition a Rel, and I think it was actually Sword Art maybe, or Core JJ, one of those two. And he just launched into his full combo, right? Like that, it was his go button.
Oh
like,
yeah, it was like the counter. Yeah, I think
like,
that was Sword Out. Yeah, Sword Out.
And W and R, and then they'll press E. You know, it's like we invited him in. So I think for me, when I saw the Skarner, I was like, okay. And then all of these other picks that followed, I was like, well, okay, you pull the Echo. He survives the pull. So if you don't burst him down during the pull, he presses R, and it never happened. He goes back to where he was before you pulled him even. It's like the ultimate Skarner pick if you don't burst him. Same with Mundo, right? It was just like, that was the exact same. We engaged the team fight for them by completely using everything we had to try to burst this guy out. You can't do it. That was a lost team fight in that moment.
Let us donate our cooldowns.
Yeah, like, oh, so we just used everything, and we are basically auto attacks now. Go ahead, like, you guys, your turn. And it didn't go well for us. So, yeah, I think both Closer didn't look confident on it, and he was not well set up to have a good Skarner game. Skarner is one of those champs. Either it goes really well or you are worse than useless.
Yeah.
And I think this one was worse.
Fair enough. In game 2, like I said, I didn't think Ryoma played well at all. And it was particularly frustrating to hear Freak kind of just decide that he wants to tear into 100T players some more. He's like, oh, look at Ryoma already missing a couple CS in the first wave, probably nerves. So like, that's like, Freak, dude. I know you just took a lot of heat. You took a lot of heat from 100T fans because you put Ssumday in 6th place in your power rankings, dude.
Right.
But he was kind of right at the same time. I saw Ryoma missing CS on cam more than just then. That was kind of like, dang, man. Dang, that hurts.
It hurts. It hurts. It absolutely does.
And then I thought he played very tentative for the rest of the match. And honestly, that surprised me because I feel like, and if Kelsey is watching, Kelsey, here's your mention of Academy. Unfortunately, it's probably not the mention of Academy you're looking for, because I'm going to say I haven't watched a ton of Academy this year. But it seemed like Azir was a pick that Ryoma had been liking and had been comfortable on. And it's not like he didn't have any good plays. I mean, he caught PoE on a really good ult when we pursued him into their jungle that kind of turned the play for us, because otherwise it was just nothing. But yeah, he just didn't look comfortable for me at all. And he was just very hesitant to fight. He was a little slow on his rotations. We saw things like he totally, I didn't understand what happened very well when I watched the first Herald take where we got Herald and got the eye but died, When I watched it back, I was like, oh yeah, Ryoma just didn't have their back at all in that. In fact, he could have used the ult to wall off the guys who were coming in to move in on Closer, and could have gotten him out of there. And he didn't at all. He didn't use the ult in the escape even, or the attempted escape. He had to flash a Seraphine CC to get out.
Yeah.
It was a little puzzling. Like it didn't look the play didn't look as bad as it ended up being when it started. And that was probably a lot of the reason why for me. And then he got caught out a few times, just straight up caught out. A lot of time without doing anything. He got caught out in front of a really important dragon setup, just playing too far up, kind of in a position where you don't have much of an excuse to do that.
Like our jungle around red buff, and because he was like the last man out,
and because he wasn't there on this dragon setup, we lost what could have been one of the best plays in 100T history when Ssumday got a 5-man Meganar ult.
Yeah,
but we were 4v5. If we have Ryoma up when that happens, they get wiped. They get wiped.
That's why you pick Azir.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
If you have a mass CC in one area like that, that's the easiest penta you've ever had.
I don't know how many 5-man Meganar ults you've seen. For me, it hasn't been a lot of them.
No, usually that wins you a team fight.
Yeah, right. It was insane.
Usually enough.
And instead we lose the whole fight, so we can't even really call it a highlight. So that was really sad. So just positioning seems bad, which, if I'm being honest, one of the things I think about Ryoma is that he will be a good fighter, I kind of feel like he's a fighter. We'll talk about that more. And so to see his positioning just be tentative, a little risky when it shouldn't be, and not risky enough when it should be, it was just sad. And then game 3, kudos to the kid for shaking off whatever the last game was. And shout out to Tom Shu, who suggested that 100T take Silas. Well, we did it that time and absolutely went off on the Silas pick. And made them regret taking Skarner. Iconic Skarner basically became like a 6th person for us, because he's just donating the ult over and over again to Ryoma. But even beyond neutralizing a lot of the effect of the Skarner, he just looked great. Like his timings were good during the fights with the CC that Silas has, locking people down. Getting just the tip of the hitbox on some of those little like chaining gauges, you know.
Yep. I like those.
And played confident is the thing. Like he didn't look tentative at all. It's like full confidence on this. And maybe that's the effect of playing against, you know, a Blaze Olive instead of Power of Evil or whatever, or Jizuke. But yeah, man, I just thought he played great in that game 3. So what a mixed
I think there's a lot of
bag.
things going. It's kind of like you made a comment earlier. Like it's hard to say if Damonte was causing us to lose games. And this is always one of the like, it's just hard to say, right? In general, FBI had a great Tristana game. And, you know, like everybody was clicking basically. Ssumday was near unkillable. He had a lot of great, you know, like he had some great shields and team fights that kept people alive. Hecarim worked great.
Oh my gosh.
This is kind of one of those things where
thank you for pointing that out. Cause I was dumping on Closer earlier. He looked amazing on the Hecarim, which if I'm remembering right, I think he played Hecarim earlier in the split and it went very poorly. I will validate that while you continue saying what you're saying.
Yeah. So anyway, it is one of those things where it's like everybody's clicking, right? Nobody had a bad game on our team. Israel looked great. Some really, you know, fight ending engages from him. So, but that's the asterisk on this one, right? It's like we were ahead and it felt like we were ahead and it felt like we couldn't really lose. Even like, you know, some of these fights toward the end were a bit sloppy, but I think it's just because we could play them that way. Like we weren't overly worried about losing a person.
By the way,
like
I was
FBI
wrong.
He
didn't play Hecarim. It looks like
this is his first one.
Yeah, my bad.
He gets taken out by a turret late in the game, and it was honestly like, oh well, who cares, right? Like not a big deal. We're so far ahead. Our lead is crazy. So I kind of feel like we were just speed running that game a little bit. So you look at that. It's kind of like I think back to one of Ricara's games from Worlds, where he had an absolutely massive stat line. I think it was like a Kaisa maybe, but you look at you watch the footage, and it's like they were setting him up and you were knocking him down. We were so far ahead that like you couldn't really mess that up. So not to say that that's what's happening in this game. And again, Golden Guardians did beat us before, so we need to beat them in the way that we did. But like this is a game where a lot of people like Close was perfect, 6-0-16. That's a crazy stat line. You know, there's a lot going right for us in this game. So, and one of them was Ryoma Silas for sure. And look, this is also the pick that I think kind of broke this team because, like you said, not only the Skarner, but the Rakan ult, even the Pantheon ult, Orianna ult.
Did he use the Pantheon ult? I didn't remember that.
I don't think he used it, but it was available. Like he could have taken it and used it, right? So that's a huge draft boon for us. Like their game plan is in shambles at level 1 because it's like, you know, if this Silas gets going, he is the ultimate champion. He has, you know, he can 1v1 anybody. He's got crazy sustain, and he has access to probably 4 of the most influential ults in the game. So that's why we need to have somebody who can play Silas like Ryoma can. And I don't know that Damonte can or can't, but we haven't seen him play it, and I'm guessing there's a reason for that. So
just for clarity's sake, are you attributing the success to the pick or to Ryoma or to both?
Both.
Okay.
And I think, you know, we spend a lot of time asking questions about draft. Like this pick, I mean, this draft, look at this draft. We're kind of all over the place now. So if you want to try to focus this in a little bit, I don't know if you were going to get to that. This draft is also just one of the best looking drafts I've seen us take too, right? Like this is what I would hope that we would be doing. It feels meta forward for one of the first times. It feels like we're actually trying something new. And I think we reap the rewards for it.
Yeah. The Shen was an interesting pick. I don't want to talk too much about this, I guess, but the Shen was an interesting pick. Ssumday didn't do particularly well on the Shen, and it's not like he did badly on it, right? But it was kind of like one of those Ssumday absorbs as much as he can. He died 4 times, which we almost didn't die during this game. I don't I didn't really notice much Stand United use during this game. I guess he didn't really have to because we were popping off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I didn't think you got any game breaking Stand Uniteds or anything like that. And yeah, he wasn't the focus. And he did fine, but everybody else was basically popping off like the whole time.
And that's the thing is, here's why I like the pick. I like the pick. I know it wasn't his most impressive game. He had only a kill. But it just gives us that much more of an ability to be anywhere on the map. And I really do think that is this team's strength.
Yeah.
Like it or not, I think that's when we're at our best. Closer, doesn't have a global ult, but he's a fast horse and he gets where he wants to be. Like we have a lot of ability. Even Ryoma, right? Like, yeah, he doesn't have a global ult, but he can grab one from a couple people or from Niles if he needs it. So I personally really like Shen. Like, I feel like that's a champion that fits super well into our identity that we've sort of lost. I saw Darkuth mentioning this earlier in chat, just saying like one of the most frustrating things is it feels like we had this really exciting thing about lock-in, right? We had this super exciting, super high octane firepower identity that we've discarded a bit. It feels like we've kind of abandoned it, and we have gone back to kind of like, steady state meta control mages, which just doesn't, not only is it's not working as well, it's not as fun to watch, and it doesn't really feel as true to who we thought we were. So I like the idea. It's kind of like Rise, right? When Damonte played Rise, like in theory,
it was a good pick. Yeah,
is exactly what we want. So these are the kinds of picks I like to see, and I wouldn't be mad if we drafted Shen again for Ssumday, because I think it is a champion who has a lot of potential to bully in lane, which we know Ssumday needs, because he's going to have that's going to be put on him. He's going to be asked to do some of that, and then he can show up wherever he's needed. So I like it, and it's one of the first times I can remember him playing Shen. Mm-hmm. So it just doesn't have as much stage time. He's played Renekton 1,000 times this split alone. So like, I'm for it. I want to see more of it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think the problem here, right, is that the results were a mixed bag. Whenever you're making substitutions, you want to have some definitive clarity coming out of your change. And we realize fully that it's one weekend of games. So in the past, we probably would have said like, hey, you need at least 2 or 3 weekends of games. You don't really have that option at this point, as long as you're looking towards mid-season rumble or whatever the heck they're deciding to call it this time.
Halfway fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't think of a better one than that. I like that a lot. But yeah, it's like difficult because I personally am like, well, I don't know what we learned here.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a whole lot of definitive differences. So my next question was going to be, what did we see change without Damonte in there? I wanted to bring something up that was dumped into our Discord by our old friend T-Man Comore, aka Carl Papa, aka Schwiffy.
The man of many names.
Yeah, he put this in. So this is just food for thought. He said, so far this season, the mid laner of 100 Thieves did the highest percentage of damage on the team only 4 times. Once, week 1 against CLG, and the last 3 games with Ryoma. So in other words, Damonte one time across all the games he played had the highest damage percentage on the team. And that was against CLG, which, yeah. And then Ryoma did it in every single one of the games this weekend.
Even the one that we said was bad.
And I would say, in fact, the one we said was bad, he did 41.5% of our team's damage, believe it or not.
Wow.
So that is interesting. Small sample size theater for sure.
Yeah.
There's no real sweeping trends you can draw from that. Like that when you see that emerge, it's like, okay, keep an eye on that to see, you know, how that evolves. It's if you're saying I know that one of the counter is like, well, what champs are you playing? We know that Damonte likes to roam and enable and everything. Their champ pools across this are actually not that different. I mean, Damonte, I think he only had the one Azir game. But Orianna is a champ. We saw him play a few times. We didn't see a Silas, obviously, but it's just interesting to see that. I mean, and this guy who posted this in our Discord, he dumped the stats there, like the damage percentages in. And I mean, Damonte had a couple, like, I don't know, he had like a bad stretch. Like week 2, it was 13.9% damage game 1, 13.6% damage percentage game 2, and then 20.2% in game 3. Like that's pretty low for a mid laner, man.
Yeah. Right.
That's pretty low. He had 17.6% in a week 1 game. He had 13% in a week 3 game. That's pretty low. It's pretty interesting. So like, and and on the other end, just so I'm giving the numbers out, Ryoma game 1, 41.5%, game 2, 27.2%, and game 3, 29.8%.
Right.
So that is maybe a surprising observation on the damage stats. But I think Ryoma was kind of like that for us last year too, right? Wasn't the line for much of the split, despite not getting a lot of resources, he consistently does some of the highest damage on our team. You know, that was kind of like the MO for Ryoma for a while at least. So it's kind of hard to draw many conclusions. Perhaps this is one of them. Too early to tell, but geez.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: who was our carry last year, all year?
I don't know.
So I ask you that because this year, who's our carry?
FBI.
Yeah, we have a definitive answer now.
Yeah.
Like I gave you some seconds to think of an answer and you couldn't, and you'd already seen the results of the exam, right? Like you knew what happened last year. So I think that's very interesting. And you asked the question you asked at the start is what changed without Damonte. I think one of the things that's changed is we have a different play style. Like in the first game, I would say what seemed to have changed is that we didn't quite know what to do, right? Like we just did a lot of positioning and shuffling of feet, and then the objective was gone. So, chalk that up, I guess, to like the roster looking very different for the first time in almost 2 years, a year and a half for a lot of these guys. Maybe if we're, maybe that's one of the things that contributed to that, because over the course of time, right, the course of the weekend, it at least looked like we were all playing the same game. But I think that what's changed is we have a different skill set in the mid lane, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at the damage numbers and the positioning, like Damonte is not a carry player. He hasn't been in this roster. He's not needed to be because FBI is that person. And it, like, I'm not saying that Damonte's not good enough to carry. I'm saying he's not playing that position in this team. I wouldn't expect to see him deal the number 1 damage share in the team because I'm like, we didn't look at what the answer is for those games, but I'm guessing it's FBI for almost every one of them.
It's got to be.
Because we played very intentionally in that direction, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey, look, I think if you're another team preparing for this, for us, right? I don't think you can look at your mid lane matchup and say we shouldn't worry about Ryoma, because at the very least, he's capable of playing more of a carry style, right? He's dealing the number 1 share of the damage within the team. So unless you're okay ignoring the source, the greatest source of damage, and maybe you are, but it does feel a little bit to me like that is a different dynamic that we haven't had with Damonte.
Yeah.
Is Ryoma's going to be in there mixing it up, dealing damage. That's his play style. He wants to fight. He wants to be in the middle of the fight. Sometimes, Papa Smithy points out, sometimes that positioning doesn't help him and he gets caught. Like, he's just an aggressive player. So that changed. That feels like a change to me, right? And that could be a good thing. That could be something that, like, maybe having FBI as kind of like a co-carry wouldn't be a bad idea in some of these strategies that we put together.
Yeah. It's interesting. Papa Smithy in chat kind of did a nice synthesis of, the point I think that we've been circling around here between what we were just talking about before this and this damage conversation, where, he said that, I'm scrolling up here, Tommy will always do damage at the sacrifice of his positioning, and we're pointing out he's getting caught out. But he's doing damage. And so that's kind of, a very nice, simple, straightforward way of putting it. And it's like you want the risk, like I said, risk where it's good and appropriate without the risk when it's not. and I feel like somewhere in the middle of these two players is, we can land there. But currently, as of right now, it doesn't seem like either of them gives us a definitive, one way or the other direction. So it's really tough. Like, I think that's probably the biggest thing I would point to that, quote, changes with Ryoma being in over Damonte. It would be impossible for us to speculate on what effect that has with the team synergy, with their chemistry. Surely, if you judge by the heist, it looks like Damonte is, he naturally assumes a leadership role within the team.
Yeah.
Which is probably not true for Tommy, if I'm being honest, right? That seems pretty clear to me.
Well, certainly not with three guys who he doesn't know nearly as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
and
he's just not been around them. I guess he knows FBI, it seems like, personally, but
yeah, they for sure, they're good friends, but it is interesting though, to like this season, we're actually getting like comms videos.
Yeah.
Right. So like perhaps we'll get more insight as to how that dynamic plays out actually in game, because people could be different in game and out of game. Certainly from what we've seen, it does feel like, Damonte provides that leadership for us. That would be good, but maybe in his absence, Closer steps up. I've really enjoyed Closer's charisma with the team, like watching those in the videos. Maybe FBI does himself. Huhi, I think, is always a guy like that, probably in game even more, Huhi is providing that for the team. So that's all speculative. And then the other thing that I guess we're going to find out is with the champions available to play, is there going to be a difference? There is a very real possibility that this just comes down to meta, right? It's just like, hey, early on in the year, meta was perfect for Damonte. Right. Now it's shifted. It's not perfect for anybody. Maybe Ryoma gets a little extra juice out. The pace of this season with 3 games per weekend and 6 weeks instead of 9 weeks to get through both round robins means that we don't have the luxury of as much time for Ryoma to slot into this particular iteration of 100T. So at this point, it's like, who should we bet on going forward?
I mean, that's a really good question, Cole. And I'm guessing that we probably won't come up with the answer just based on one weekend's worth of games.
I did come up with the timing of the Ryoma replacement. Let us not forget. I will never let us forget.
Maybe we should let you lead this off then if you're feeling confident about.
Oh, I'm not. See, that's precisely the thing though. It's like that is my frustration about the past weekend, is that I don't feel we got a definitive answer. I don't feel like we can look at it and say, oh, okay, clearly Ryoma is a better pick, or clearly Damonte is a better pick. I think do you want me to give you things that are a little different. My hunch is that my hunch is that at this point, it would probably be better to just keep Ryoma in and see what he does. When they made the change, I think the thing I was saying was, I almost at this point would kind of just like to ride it out with Damonte and just see if we just, say screw the meta and just kind of do what he does and see where that takes us, and then adjust after the, what did you call it? The middle fight,
midway fight.
Which
I think is actually
I just
something from the Pacific Theater of World War II, but anyhow.
The midway fight. The fight of Midway. Not quite it, right? But yeah, I don't know. I just I don't feel strongly in either direction, which is unusual for me because I usually have some strong feelings about 100T mid lane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who doesn't, right? That's part of being a fan. I can try. I'll give you my non-evasive answer to this. I'm pretending to be the coach here. Cool. Here's what I would say. It's yes, those 2 games are certainly disappointing. We wanted to win those. Obviously, that would have put us in a much better position, not only from feeling like we understand what our capabilities are with this current iteration of the roster, but from a positioning standpoint too, puts us in a better spot for the midway fight. So here's what I'm thinking. I do wonder if partially the first couple of games were an adjustment period. Like, I think there is an adjustment period, and I don't think you get to just throw somebody in after a few days of practice and assume that it's going to be your final form.
Yeah. For sure.
And it's not it can't take 8 weeks, but I think it's reasonable to not expect it to take 3 days.
Yeah.
So I do think that you run this back. I think you run this roster back. I think one of the worst things you can do is just have this hot seat where you're flopping back and forth, and not only do you not get any kind of synergy with the team, but it's I think it has a real effect on the mental of the players who are getting just constantly jumping back and forth between Academy and LCS. So I don't think you want to do that. So I think you just I think you go with it. Mm-hmm. And here are the things I'm interested to see as we go, assuming that we're going to actually keep Ryoma in. This is why I'm betting on him going forward. We have a lot of tape on Ryoma, right? And Zix was the one who was holding the camera, if that's the kind of tape we're recording here. So he knows it firsthand, right? Ryoma is a very well-known quantity to him. It won't take Zix as long to understand if Ryoma can work with this lineup. And I think because he's worked with him as much as he has to understand how, if it's going to work, how it will work. Like, this is not experiment mode. At this point, you have a great understanding of what Ryoma is capable of. All you have to do now is see if you can put that strategy in place, put the draft together, design the game plan that takes the most advantage of his strengths and minimizes his weaknesses. And so I think you should know after a few weeks and probably realistically what that means is, I think we're talking about after the midway fight here, like that will give you a lot of confidence to either say going into summer, this is our guy or this isn't our guy. Like, I think that's the play. That's what you go with. I think you'll be able to say with more confidence at that point whether or not this is the move you want to be making, or if it's just not going to work.
How frustrating is it that is always the question? Always the question, man. It's always the question.
Will this work?
Will this be the guy going forward in mid lane is like the consistent question, man.
I mean, I think there are a lot of teams who have this issue.
Oh yeah.
Degree.
Like I've always made the quarterback comparison. Everybody in the world makes the quarterback comparison. It's like, once you have the guy, you keep the guy.
Right. Most people don't have the guy.
Right.
Even C9 dropped a couple games.
But so I do think that you're right in the sense that it's like, once you make a change like this, you can't just revert it really quickly. I mean, did you see the look on Damonte's face during the heist when they were doing the roundtable discussion? I don't know this, but it sure looks to me like he was told he was being replaced right before they recorded it, man. Dude was sitting there like this. He was like just quiet
Tanner,
for so much.
A quick word.
Yeah.
A quick word before the roundtable.
It was
Damonte's
insane.
Out. Ryan was in next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dude looked crushed, man, and angry. So,
yeah.
Look, that's speculation. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but there was undeniably some face that was being made that's not usually the Damonte face we see on the heist.
And whether or not that could have just been his innate sense, right, as a player, that like,
yeah,
I don't think this is going the way it should be going, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not feeling as confident.
Right. Yeah. And it could be just mad after a tough week. You know, I don't know, but I'm just saying, goodness, it did not seem good. And then he went kind of silent on socials for a while. Which, by the way, kudos to him, because that's what I think you should do. I think as a player, you should do. The community is just ridiculous. I mean, we're doing a podcast where we openly discuss who we think is the weak link and who needs to be replaced and everything. But, you know, we try and be fairly respectful about that conversation and to give credit where credit is due as much as we can, even when we disagree with, you know, something. But holy crap, man, the league community can be brutal. Yeah. So I applaud that decision to just kind of disconnect for a while, and I hope he can stay mentally strong and get a chip on his shoulder. It seemed like he had a chip on his shoulder the previous year, and that was kind of a driver for him doing well, you know, in the previous split. So maybe he regains a little bit of that. I don't know, but it's certainly a case where as soon as you open Pandora's box with these player changes, it's kind of irreversible. So you have to bang those things out, and hopefully they resolve themselves very clearly, so there can be no I deserve to be there or he doesn't deserve to be there, you know. So
well, and you made this point in passing, but you know, it's very possible that the meta shifts again in the future in a way that favors Damonte. And you know, I think the last thing you want is for there to be some kind of bad blood or, you know, event that comes up that prevents us from saying, Damonte, this is your week, right? This is your patch. Get in there, do your thing. Because it would be so easy for him to slot back in with his team, right? Like you don't have to worry about that because he already knows how this team plays. So, I mean, that is, I think, obviously the best case scenario for him is that the meta does shift in at some point in the future. But you got to be ready, right? Like you got to be ready for that call when it comes through. So I hope that that's the case. I mean, as a fan, of course, I hope that that's the case, because if the champions that he excels at are the ones that are being played, then yeah, he's the one I want to be in there. But it's tough, right? It's tough. It's a lot to ask somebody to just kind of wait. But I think sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah. Okay, so that is 50 solid minutes of discussion about mid lane on 100 Thieves. As promised, I think it'd be worth having a quick conversation about some of the other concerns or ideas we have about the team. And just making some other observations before we get into listener takes and then predictions. So let's start there. What other concerns or observations do we have about this team? And I will just kind of complete the loop here and just bring up Closer. I think has been inconsistent as of late, which was really surprising to me. I was really, really proud of his performance during lock-in, and it seems like he kind of lost his way a little bit. I saw him miss a Lilia bowling ball and Scuttle Crab this weekend.
Boot.
Yeah, he just looks not right. And I loved his tweet after, or was it before? I don't know. But his tweet about the Golden Guardians game where he was like, our slump started with GG, it ends with GG. I like that energy a lot. And he obviously played very well against Golden Guardians. So I hope he's back up on the saddle in that respect. But that's something I'm watching for, because you assume that a lot of decision making is kind of led by the jungler in many of these objective plays, and our objective plays have not looked nearly as strong as of late. Like I said, there were a couple we just watched him take it in front of us, and
those hurt.
It's like if you're gonna give, but don't stay and watch as you give. Go take something somewhere else. You know what I mean? And I don't know what was going on. So that's kind of one thing I'm for sure keeping my eye on right now. What about you?
Yeah, Ssumday is kind of just the question mark for me a little bit. Um, it's weird. I feel like Freak's ranking, obviously, make of it what you will. But I think it's hard to argue that he's not. I think it's hard to argue that he looks like the Ssumday from years past. And the weird thing to me is he has a more probably the most competent roster around him, maybe other than our like 2018 roster.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it just looks like he's not, I don't know, individually hitting the notes that he usually does. Like, talk about weak side player. I feel like he played weak side for 2 straight years, right? Because he had to out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So it does feel weird to me that I feel like we continue to see him get caught, continue to see him just, caught in bad positions, kind of compromised spots in lane or, on a split. Like, it used to be that he was just literally unkillable. It didn't really matter. And so this is a very big change. And I'm not really sure what to make of it at all. Because it doesn't feel like there's anything that's fundamentally different about either our approach or what we're asking of him. It's not like he's used to having constant jungle presence and now he's left out in the cold. So yeah, I don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah, it is weird. I think most of when it's noticeable is when he's just getting caught out. And maybe it's being a little lazy about some things. I saw him take that path up through river at the start of the Golden Guardians game, and he just walked by and just let Niles like boom, boom, auto, just wail on him as he was going by. So he's like walking into lane with half the health bar gone. There's probably some wave control, wave management reason for that I don't understand because I'm an idiot about League, but
I just don't think he could. I don't think Shen can fight Pantheon at level 1. Like, if he stands and fights, he dies. Like, you have to just walk back in lane. You have to accept that you've lost that trade and go.
Yeah.
So
there's almost always going to be some crazy pop off play from him throughout the game.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
We talked about the 5-man Meganar stun. There's also another one where he soloed PoE and flashed the engage from Huni, I think, and killed him too with little help. Like, it was like a crazy good play in that TSM game.
Yeah.
So you get those Ssumday moments still for sure. So he's still got it in him, but yeah, it just seems like he's just getting caught out more than we're used to, which is goofy. So yeah, keeping my eye on that for sure. I still think when he's playing at his best, there's probably that you can't really do anything about it. Even if you have a super good mid laner or top laner, like even if you're playing into like Alfari or whatever,
yeah,
it's like the best you can do is like not die to him because you're not going to kill him when he's playing his best. To just I feel like the TSM turret joke that we have was kind of invented for Ssumday, right? Where it's like, okay, we can't kill him with 1, we can't kill him with 2, can't kill him with 3, send 4. Maybe that was fake out actually, but
it was the specific one was fake out.
But certainly that's been true for him, and in the past, and it's not as true anymore. So keeping my eye on that. Someone else I've mentioned is Huhi. I thought he looked actually really good this weekend. In fact, his game 3 on the Rel looked very good. And that pick specifically was one that's like, he's got to figure out how to play that consistently so that we can win. I thought he looked great in that game against Golden Guardians. Very pleased with that. He didn't die. He was 3-0-17. And just seemed to have the right play at the right moment. He's maybe not, True Venom's pointing out in chat, he's maybe not roaming quite as much as we expect, like Huhi the roamer to do.
He did roam a lot, I think, in the EG game, if I'm remembering right. I mean,
Yeah,
we talked about
roaming
why
up like to
kinda
mid lane and stuff. Yeah, he did do that. But I think like who his story this split has been like, he looked really, really, really good for a while, and then had a couple of games that were kind of like questionable. Nothing bad, like nothing straight up bad, but seems to be kind of back in form a bit. So I wanted to point that out as like as a positive. I think he's played pretty well, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. The Rel game felt like it felt like he was a huge help in lane, like some really strong engages in lane. Some of the Rel games in the past, it feels like the Rel engages he's had in lane. That's the thing about Rel. If you go in, you've got to be able to back it up, because you're like basically crawling back to your side of the lane if it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
So I mean, he used those to great effect. And the team fight was great too. Like he pulled off the combos he needed to find some good surprise engages. So I agreed across the board. I think that was a much more promising showing.
Yeah. And then I think the final thing for me is I would just like to see, I think largely we have been absolutely great at objective control. That has faltered a little bit recently. I don't think drastically. But I've noticed which game was it? Was it game 2 against TSM this weekend? I forget if there was a game where we didn't get the first dragon, and I noticed how much I expect us to get the first dragon. Because they're like, what? That's not fair.
It's like TSM with the Olaf.
I like couldn't believe it, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Just keep my eye on, like with Closer kind of seesawing a bit recently. The objective control, it will be watching to see if that stays on top. You had something else that you tossed onto the rundown as a surprise to me that I want you to give your soliloquy on, and then I'll see if I have anything to add on this. So without further ado, Jordan, please take the stage.
Okay, thank you. I've prepared this short speech for the speech contest. I hope that you enjoy. Cole, we have a 6-man roster currently. Whether or not, actually, no. We could have a 6-man roster. Technically, we have a 6-man roster because we've played 6 players this split. Here's my question for you. This is an evergreen question. It's not just for us. It's for every League of Legends team that has ever existed. Can a 6-man roster work? And I think that the answer is no. Unfortunately, I don't think it can work. But wouldn't it be nice if you could have a bench of players who you could call on to do things that the other players couldn't do as well? Like, can you think of another sport where you have exactly the number of players on your roster as positions that you play? And what I don't get is why probably more players, because I think the block is the players. Like, I think that mental boom is a real thing. And it may just be that I've lived through a couple of Medios stints on our rosters where he's made it very clear his opinion on 6-man rosters, that he doesn't like it. So it feels to me like every time this comes up, the elephant in the room is, do you nuke the synergy of your roster? Do you completely explode the mentality of what you're relying on to take you to, if you want to go to Worlds, like you need those players to be in fighting shape for a long time. It just feels so much to me like we look at players and say, he's good at this, not as good at this. What if there was a way to have a more well-rounded roster overall? I don't have an answer for this. I don't know that there is one, but it continues to appear to me like something as simple as meta shift can knock a player out of LCS contention, basically. Like, that's what we're seeing with Damonte, right? If the meta was the same as it was in week 1, I fully expect he'd still be playing. And for me, that just feels like something that's entirely outside of an organization's control, to the degree that you're putting a lot of eggs in 5 baskets to just say, we have confidence that all these players will be able to perform at the same level they are when we sign them, regardless of what happens with the meta. it feels like a very big blind leap into months from now, where there's going to be like 4 new champions. They're going to completely remove some of them from the game, from pro play viability. I don't know, man. It's probably a pipe dream, but it just feels to me like, boy, I mean, you look at CDL, I feel like that's a game where you'd say, I don't know, just pick the 4 best guys who shoot the gun, right? Like who is good at using the weapons.
You guys know us for our silver League of Legends analysis. Just wait until you hear our iron Call of Duty analysis.
But like what changes over the course of a CDL season? Does anything? Do they even change the gun balance?
Yeah, they do.
But it's not, I mean, it's still like the same two guns.
But you have AR specialists, you have certain AR specialists, you have sub specialists.
But like, if you're a sub player, like Kenny's always going to be, well, I guess it's not exactly true. Anyway,
it's just the most ninja take that you can have.
Yeah.
Just shoot him, bro.
Well,
I feel like there are people who just won't miss shots. Can't be that hard.
But you get what I'm saying. It's not like there are 150 different guns in Call of Duty, and it's like pick the guy who can shoot most of those guns.
That's true.
So thank you. I don't know. League of Legends seems like a game where you'd be well suited to have multiple options, and I don't understand why no one ever has figured out the way to do that.
It just seems it's just players, man. It just seems like it's a player issue. Like the culture of League of Legends, and I say this as a total outsider to this, right? You and I have less LCS experience than most of the people listening to us. But it just seems like there is this sense of like the players in past days really built the league, earned their spots. They were stars, they were popular, and they just don't seem to like the idea that anybody else could deserve the same thing that they have.
Right.
It's like, well, we built this. We built this. I've earned my reputation, etc. And I don't think that that's completely wrong, to be honest. And I think you see that in traditional sports as well. Even in sports where people are rotated in, there are certain concessions made to top stars, right? They have that pull. But man, my sense is that they just do not take well to any challenges of who they are and any admission of like, okay, maybe this other player could be better, or just the reality of treating this like a real full functioning business where it's like, okay, business decisions have to be made and sometimes they're difficult and sometimes they hurt feelings, but it's a business. Like that is when you watch those like HBO shows about sports and documentaries and stuff like that. Right. That's what they talk about all the time. It's like, well, it is a business. This is tough, but it's a business. And I don't think the traditional guard of League of Legends likes that sentiment at all. I mean, you mentioned Medios. The dude is still on stream, still making comments about 2018, right? He's still doing it. He still said they randomly bench players, right? Like he's still out there doing it. So they don't let go.
3 years later.
Yeah, they don't let go. So that may be a generational thing with the players in the league, and maybe in future generations they're more, okay, I gotta every day earn my spot. I gotta grind solo queue all the time. I gotta know that it's just business, and there are guys that are hungry and who want my spot all the time,
right?
And so if I want to stay up here, I have to continue to be the best, and that's tough. It's a sucky part of the business, but you know why? That is one of the reasons why people are paid so much money to do this.
Right.
Is it's really tough. It's difficult. You have to like turn off your emotions, and it just the scene just doesn't seem to be, from an outsider's perspective, the scene just does not seem to be in a place where that can happen. So I don't think 6-man rosters at this time are really really
I don't either.
possible. I mean, the attitude of like, again, not to just harp on Medios, but since he made those comments about us, you remember he was like, feels just kind of awkward because I'm expected to help my potential replacement. It's like,
Yeah.
That's kind of the job, man. That's kind of the job. And just be better, just be better.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, if you are an established player, you do get the benefit of the doubt more. I mean, how often do we refuse to give academy players or collegiate players even a chance because, they're only academy and they don't have the LCS experience and all this stuff? Like, it's definitely an uphill battle for every single player who wants to get a spot. And until we see things like, say, a Niles who comes straight out of collegiate and he's kind of dumped on, but at the same time, he's kind of holding his own, in a way where it's like, I don't think Niles has showed that he doesn't deserve to be in the LCS. I think he's taken a lot of abuse, like you were pointing out too, and he's kind of holding up to it. So until you get enough stories of that and enough examples of people coming up through, and we watch them through amateur, through academy, through collegiate, and they show that the stage is there and they're not that different. Like when we see amateur teams beat academy teams in proving grounds or whatever. I don't even know how that structure really works. But once we get more of that and players kind of age out of their generational spots, maybe that's possible in the future. But it ain't possible right now.
Yeah. I would say that the first team who figures it out, I think they have a big advantage.
Huge advantage. And it's arguable that C9 has done that to some extent. So maybe that's why they continually be good. Yeah. Okay. So that was a more interesting conversation. I didn't think I had anything to say about that. So thanks for...
I knew I would tee you up for it, Cole. Don't worry.
Yeah, thanks for winding me up. Let's do some listener takes, listener questions. And I want to start out with this. Guys, there is a true art to having a take, right? And it's a hard thing to do. But Nickel Polka has done it. Nickel Polka gets one of the just the best overall takes we've had on the show, probably, where it's funny, it's kind of true, it's kind of outrageous. It's just like a mix of everything, and he phrases it in the right way. So I have to read it exactly as Nickel Polka intended.
Here it is.
Who says, 100 T's best mid laner is their academy head coach. That is so good. That is so good. I was like laughing, just laughing reading that tweet. If for whatever reason you don't know, he's talking about Golden Glue. He may not be wrong. We're not sure. Oh man. I think breaking down this take would be disrespectful to how well constructed it is. So I think we just have to say it as kind of like, maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. I absolutely loved that take. Actually, I will say something. It's not exactly like there's no precedent for this, right? For 100 T.
Bring in the coach.
Ryu kind of did this.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same, but Ryu kind of did this in the past.
It wouldn't even be an import slot. So I just realized something. BC just says who he is our best mid laner in chat. And I just realized, Cole, there is a bizarre scenario here where Puhi roll swaps back to mid for us. Poom comes back into support. And I think then we have to conclude the show. I think the show has to end.
There's no way to go on. Yeah, it's like and the other part of this is we have four LCS mid laners. We don't know which one to play. have more options than anybody.
We could field almost an entire team of mid laners. Just put mid laners in every position, Cole.
Wow, man, we
Can you
should
imagine the draft for that? Look, I don't know who they're taking mid.
Oh my gosh, I feel like lightheaded from this.
They've got Syndra, Orianna, Silas, Victor, and Tristana.
Okay.
Oh, thank you for the take,
Nickel Folka. That was truly incredible. Credit where credit's due.
Jared reminds us, don't forget 100 next. So there you go. There's our 5th mid laner. The full squad, all mid.
Okay.
Team all mid. Tam.
It's Tammer time.
Team all mid.
Okay.
Oh boy, we've lost the thread. Okay.
Team Solamente mid.
No. Oh, he did it. He did it.
Okay. All right. Let's bring back. Let's get back on track here if we can. So I'm definitely not going to BC's take yet because that will just continue the current direction. Instead, let's go to Joelito. Oh man, I'm like sweating from laughing so hard. Joelito says, I think we can safely assume whoever is mid is a placeholder for whoever we pick up once visa issues with Ssumday get sorted. And if we want to compete for championships and worlds. Neither one is enough to take us to the next level. But, and that's where you should have ended the take lengthwise, just giving a tip to everybody else. Some of you guys are writing really long takes. But he says, neither one is enough to take us to the next level, but I want to see Damonte because we see him do more with less. Ryoma cannot create pressure for his life, but plays champs that are supposed to carry and eat up all the resources. Put Damonte on comfort or, quote, Orn duty. Which he's saying, like, not literally put him on. Yeah. And let everyone else work. So, doing more with less. We do have the damage thing where we know Ryoma is going to bring the damage, possibly at the cost of his life. But it is interesting to think about the resource consumption aspect of it, especially, like I said, in game 1, we were seeing some mid lane plays out of the team.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
It's actually so interesting that he brings up pressure because I forgot how much we talked about that and how much of a thing that was last season. That was, I think, one of the ultimate deciders for me. Was it felt like Ryoma, he wouldn't. There were a lot of matchups where he could hold his own, but he never could create the pressure that we needed to actually keep the enemy mid laner in mid. So they essentially had free roam to go other places and exploit our weaknesses as a team. This is 2019. So I'm very interested to see. I think that's actually, so I'm really glad that Joel brought this up. We got to figure that out. And I think if that can continue to be something that is exploited, then that creates a new set of problems for us that probably is different from Damonte. I'm less concerned. Like FBI still got rich. He was still a menace. Less so, obviously, when in the EG game, I think, was that the game where he was on Tristana? Or Callista?
Callista
he was on
TSM,
Xayah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, he was left on Xayah in lane for quite a while. He just was a non-factor in that game. So yeah, it's something to definitely keep an eye on. But if we can have it where Ryoma is doing the #1 damage share and FBI is playing a champion like he did against Golden Guardians, where he is fully capable himself of deleting people, that's a good look. That's a really good look for us. Yeah. So good take.
Let's go to Glenn E. Taylor, who said, draft philosophy, draft to meta, draft to strengths, i.e. create your own meta, or a happy medium. I don't think a happy medium is a solution, personally. I think you got to commit to doing one of these two things. I think we saw Damonte's clutch gaming stint, by the way, being the draft to strengths kind of deal. And that brought them, it's not like they won anything, but took them to a level that they would not have been if they weren't playing that style, in my opinion. So there's an argument there that we've seen for drafting to strengths. And I don't think you ever want to completely ignore that. But again, I think you have to commit to one of these two things. And the other is draft to meta. Now, if I'm honest, this is kind of contradictory for me because on the one hand, I do feel like, I kind of just wish we would have left Damonte in and for the rest of this split and just kind of see where it got us. But at the same time, when I'm talking about ideal way to play, I honestly feel like it's draft to meta, because if you're a pro player, I think it's a fair expectation that you should be able to play whatever's meta. I think that's part of your job. And drafting to meta means kind of, at its essence is like picking the power picks, playing what works well at the moment on this patch. And that's like built-in advantage. So if you eschew that advantage, it's kind of not smart. If you don't do that, you're basically banking on doing something that's so different that other teams can't prepare for it, which is probably a riskier, proposition than just taking, oh, hey, that champ is one of the 200-year champs. We better be playing it. It just seems like a more sure way to play. Merc Destroyer is saying, I still don't understand why we have not played Seraphine at all. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it feels like, for me, if I'm talking to pro players, I'm like, no, you guys should be able to play the meta picks. Mm-hmm. That is in your job description.
I want to see Seraphine this weekend, whether it's Ryoma or Huhi. Like, I think if we get Seraphine Olaf, that feels like a good chance at a dub for us. I want to add one to this, which is make the meta. Like, and this
like
is what we run into.
Good pitch, Jordan.
Like Rec League. Be Rec League is another thing to aspire to. There's always going to be a team that sets the meta, right? And I think that takes a special team. Like, I'm not sure that every team should aspire to be that, because I think a lot of times users end up trolling. But there are those teams out there which are going to do stuff that other teams then copy. And it might be even between regions. I think there's a version of a happy medium that you can accomplish, which is find the pieces of the meta that fit best to your strengths, but continue playing to your strengths. I think sometimes what I see us do too often is just draft things that are good, but that we're not particularly good at, right? That don't fit the mentality of our players. And I think those are some of the games where we feel flattest, where it's like, great, we've got these powerful champions. What do we do with them?
Yeah.
We just shuffle around in the jungle for a little bit, and then whoop, we lost soul. There we go. So I think there is a version of happy medium. And that actually might look a little bit like creating the meta, right? Like, if you can find a way to use the champions that are good to do the things that you want to be doing, that feels like, to me, the sweet spot.
Yeah. King Clang says Ryoma is a better fit for the team overall, and looking at last year's performance isn't worth as much when you see 3/4 of his original teammates aren't in LCS anymore. He's severely undervalued as a teammate looking at his academy stats, and I hope we stick with him.
This might be
it's a good insight.
If this ages well. Yeah, King Clang is going to be feeling like a real smart guy if this ages well. And like, kind of going back to what I pointed out earlier, I think we looked at Ryoma as we needed him to be the carry, and we didn't always put a lot of pieces around him to enable that. It was a pretty volatile roster. So yeah, if this is a steady state roster that we can put him in and he can continue to do the types of things he's been good at. He's had great Zoe games. He's had great Galio games. He just had a great Silas game. If we can find a way to get him to be that player more often than not, and maybe it's in part by saying, hey, the game plan here is for FBI to take over. Everybody else show up and do your job. And one of Ryan's job is to, devastate the enemy team with Zoe. Great. That feels fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be very interested. This is going to remind me in 6 weeks if we actually end up seeing Ryoma.
Yeah, I like the reminder about the team that he was on. It is different.
Right.
So I think that's this is something to keep in mind. I'm not sure we're going to see it borne out fully. But yeah, I think that's an interesting take and something to keep an eye on. BC has a solution for our problem, by the way. He suggests that we fusion dance Ryoma and Damonte to create Ryante.
Oh.
He says, only solution I can come up with in this difficult situation. Worth a shot. And if you're interested, he even created a visual of what this would look like if you go to our Twitter account, which I'll shout out in the chat here.
BC created that?
Yeah, with FaceApp or Reface, sorry. I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure he's on a couple of watch lists now for that.
Yeah, he is. He's probably doing the Tom Cruise deepfake accounts too. Let's see. We've got 2 more. Let's go to Cyric next. Cyric actually got me his take after the first game of the weekend. So he was jumping this early. He said the concerns the team has shown so far are much deeper than one lane or player. And if they were set on a swap, only one player is playing it too cautiously. The swap was too little. The swap, assuming they were set on a roster swap, should have been Damonte and Closer for Ryoma and Kenvi. Or if they wanted to be really extreme with the swap, bring up all of Academy minus Tenacity for the weekend. First of all, don't pick on Tenacity, man. I love that guy. He's going to be good. But yeah, I love this idea where it's like, hey, look, we didn't do enough. I also like the built-in thing about Closer because, like I said, he has been up and down and a little worrying at times. Not sure I can get. Sorry, cleared that. I said minus Tenacity because of Ssumday. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
We know what you're going for.
But yeah, I think best jawline NA, by the way, recently
Easily,
overthrew Jackson Dahl.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sorry, Jackson.
I think I can't get on board all the way with this, even though I like it. And it is interesting. It's like divorcing a mid laner from his jungler, right? Is in a way divorcing him from the thing that has led to the good stats, right? Like you assume they have a good working relationship if Ryoma is doing really well in Academy. So if you pluck him out of that and put him in, it's different. That said, there's probably just something different, especially with Kenvi, who has not played LCS. It's not like he's a former LCS jungler or something like that. There's just everything that I have been told by smarter people and people who have more experience with this, like real experience actually being, on the teams that make these decisions and stuff, is like there's just a jump in how the game is played. Yeah. Right. And so it might be a little too drastic for me. Jordan, do you disagree with anything?
No, I agree with that. I definitely see value in this idea of like there's a grander experiment here that you could conduct. For me, the thing that would hold me back is we still have a lot to lose, right? Like this is not all chips on the table trying to make it into playoffs. We are actually still in a position to compete for upper bracket. And so we've got to be pretty, I guess you don't have to be anyway. There's an argument to be made here to be a bit more cautious, right? Like if you put the entire Academy team in minus Tenacity, you should expect to lose more games than not. And like there's a very, very good chance that you expect to lose every game you play, just because that's kind of the way Academy and LCS goes. So for me, it feels like I think there's still definitely value in having a good seed for the midway fight, and I don't think I'm ready to give that up.
Yeah.
Just in order to kind of see what would happen if we shook things up a bit.
Last take of the night is Miller Time 1919. So not Milla Time, but Miller Time 1919, who says, do you think it's poor drafting or poor play with the comps that is hurting us in the losses? Do you think the comps were us playing outside our strengths? This sounds like a question for Jordan. So poor drafting, or we don't pilot the champions according to how the draft demands.
Yes. I think it's pieces of all of that. I do think there are genuinely poor drafts that we've seen. Like I talked about the Skarner pick, and I definitely think that was a pick that ended up being punished in the draft that was then played less than optimally by Closer. So I think it's both. And look, I'll be honest. I do put more of that on the coach than on the player. I think it's partially the coach's responsibility to understand what the player's comfort zone is. And if your players have limitations that you don't think are acceptable, it's also your job to do something about that. So, I'm putting a lot on the coach here, but like, I think a good coach is going to understand the limitations and make drafts that minimize the downside, maximize the upside. And I think that there have been a couple of situations, and I think Zix has owned some of them where we've not done a good job of that. So yeah, and I think that the hard push toward control mages when we weren't confident that Damonte was as good at those champions is another example of that, right? Like, just because that's what the meta is, unless they just genuinely didn't know, which I can't imagine is the case.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, I was gonna.
You scrim, and so that's how you know. That's
right.
Yeah.
And I was gonna bring up those meta champs that we're not playing. Like the fact that we haven't seen a Seraphine, as kind of draft related. There's always a question: does the player play it? But again, in my opinion, pro players should be able to play them. So I hate giving a mixed answer. I hate saying both, but when I look at, just looking at this past weekend, I see examples of both things. For instance, it's like, I don't think we had the best draft against EG, but I also don't think we needed to ult and hyper commit to Dr. Mundo. Like there were some clear errors made by the players to kind of throw some things in the wrong direction. So there is that going on. The TSM game, I felt out drafted. The Callista pick is interesting. Thresh is like basically the best support there is. But Closer was on Lilia, and it's that he doesn't pilot that as well as some other people in LCS. Meanwhile, in the other half, they've got the Olaf, they've got the Seraphine, they've got a Jace played by Huni who knows how to make those shock blasts land. Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. Golden Guardians game, I feel like the Silas pick was pretty game breaking, and Hecarim we brought out for the first time. Tristana looked great, so I just see evidence for both sides of this continually, which is not a fun answer to give.
Here's the answer I'll give. We need to see many more of the drafts like Golden Guardians than like TSM. And that is how I'm going to be evaluating, like, what do we do with this roster, right? So for me, that feels like a safe answer on this.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on then to predictions for this upcoming week, and then we can kind of close this thing out. Jordan, we play Immortals, who are standing at 7-8 in 7th place right now. That's our Friday game. What do you think?
Okay. Oh, I think we win.
You think we win against Immortals? Can you give us some more?
Not really. Not Cole. Here's what I think. All of the things we've talked about, we are still somehow sitting. What is our current standing? Tied for 4th?
4th, I think. Yeah. With Liquid. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're still sitting tied for 4th with Liquid. We still have really strong individual players. Currently I'm bullish that the extra week of practice will help, and that we will have a smarter draft as a result of it. So I think that we, Immortals is a team that I think we are fully capable of beating. And I think we do. Like, I don't want to get too much more into it, but that's what I think.
So I think I forgot a lesson that I kind of had known for a really long time, but I kind of lost touch with it before, even though I did predict last week accurately. In fact, I even think I called how the games would play out accurately.
I think you did.
But momentum, right? Momentum is a thing for sports.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've historically given that in LCS valuations enough credit. I think that the way we beat Golden Guardians was a huge confidence boost, especially since we had lost to that team previously. And I think that's going to give us sufficient momentum going into the weekend to feel good and play well. So I actually, if we didn't beat them handily, like if we barely squeaked out a win or less, I probably would have said Immortals in this, just because things have felt so bleak and the energy is so low. But because we actually did, I think, have a momentum creating game against Golden Guardians that the team seemed to be really like locked in about on Twitter afterwards. Master Roshi like lost his mind even going off about it. But so I think they're going to carry that momentum into the Immortals game. So I do see us winning against Immortals. So I've got us also winning that one.
There we go.
Saturday we have FlyQuest, who is 5-10 and in 8th place. Jordan,
I think we also beat them. Obviously, a team that has had more of a challenging split. It's the same things, right? There's not a lot different here other than that. I think that if we don't give away the draft, I think there's a very good chance that we just kind of we outplay them in different positions. And I think our bot lane still has the capability to completely take over the game. Ssumday into Licorice is always an interesting one. So that's something I'm a little bit worried about. But again, I think that's one of those where you can still lose lane, win game in the top lane. I think that's still a thing. I think I like Closer over Jose Diodo.
Yeah.
So I'm unless something bad happens with our draft or macro, which again, I expect the macro to pick up significantly in this week between last week and this week, then I think that's a pretty feel good game for us.
You and I are like exactly locked in on this, like everything you said. My biggest worry with FlyQuest is always Licorice, because he seemed to be kind of an antidote for Ssumday in games past. But I think we've seen, a lot of the secret to the Licorice recipe was Blabber. He just hasn't looked quite like himself since he's left that C9 squad. And so I think, I don't think he ends up turning the game. So it's going to take a really goofy pick from them to beat us. It'll be like something we're totally not prepared for. That's kind of like meta breaking. They have to do that, or we just have to completely int draft to lose to them. Is kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Like, I think the takeaway from these first two games is our draft against Golden Guardians a fluke? And I'm using that word intentionally because I like it.
So does Haste.
Or is it? Yeah, he does. Hasn't been kind to him over time. Or
3
is that
times
actually
in a row? Anyway, sorry, I can't let that go.
Is it a fluke, or is that what we should expect? And I have to believe that it was an intentional decision and representative of what we can do. Unless we kind of like chanced into that draft, if we did, and if we go back to a pretty standard draft that it is punishable by a team who's prepared to play more meta picks or who has kind of their own thing going, then I think there's a chance we lose 1 or 2 of these games. But if we can actually bring something that feels like it plays to our strengths, then I feel good.
Well, that leads us into the final game of the weekend and the final game of Spring Split. Or I guess it's not split, whatever they're calling it, but spring. Before the halfway fight. Team Liquid, who is tied with us in 4th place. Team Liquid, 4th place. What a nice combination. At 9-6. Jordan, your predict.
I think they get us. It feels to me like they are figuring some things out. They just cleaned up C9. I think that's a team that has historically had our number. There's a lot of things we don't have good answers for. I think one of them tends to be their ability to play the edge of the meta. And it's obviously it's not worked for them every time, but they've shown that they can do it to take out top teams, and I think they're going to be well prepared for us.
Can I say though that I can only see through I can only go back as far as summer playoffs in this current display that I'm looking at on Team Liquid, but we've beaten them the last 2 games. Also,
we played them early.
Alfari's first name is Barney, which is really something.
What?
That's awesome. Kudos to him.
Is he? Yeah.
But I agree. I think Liquid, I've always said I expect Liquid to be one of the title contenders by the end of this split. Yep. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them take on C9 in the final or whatever, I think they have that edge. I think Alfari right now is doing a lot to kind of, he can neutralize Ssumday and even get an advantage over him. If Ssumday keeps making some of the mistakes that we've seen him made. I don't know. The rest of the map, it's like bot lane. We've shown that we can hang with them in bot lane. Like Core JJ is insane, but FBI is really insane too, and who he's been playing really solid.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay there, but between like mid and jungle and top,
yeah,
it's hard to see us kind of holding them off. So I'm going to go Team Liquid win also.
We have players in those positions that seem to be slumping. We've talked about that throughout the pod. This is either going to be a game that reemphasizes that fact or that we have a bounce back performance against really stiff competition. So it is going to be one of those two things. I'll say this too. If we drop games against Immortal and Fly at the end of the split, your momentum is basically gone going into the halfway fight. And that makes me nervous because it feels like, this is not CLG, although they also beat somebody very good this weekend. Did they beat C9? Or who did they beat on Sunday? Chat?
Who?
CLG.
I thought you said CLG, but it's like, I didn't
CLG
watch
beat
that
Liquid. Game. CLG beat Liquid on Sunday.
Well, that just means Liquid got their loss out of the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. So anyhow, it's like these are mid-table teams. Like this is 7th and 8th. But these are the teams that are, if you're gonna be in the top half, you got to beat these teams. And if we lose to them, it's gonna sap our confidence going in. It's gonna be tough. This is gonna be a really challenging weekend.
Yep. Well, you and I both predicting the 2-1 in very similar ways. We'll see if the Prophet Cole streak continues. Guys, it's been
I'm glad that I went first, so I can't be accused of just jumping on the Prophet Cole bandwagon.
Oh man, everybody's jumping on the Prophet Cole bandwagon after the events of the past 10 days. Everybody, it's been really fun tonight. I'm still laughing inside my head about that nickel polka take. We've got Rec League coming up on Thursday. It'll be very fun.
Always is.
It always is. That's right. We got I know we haven't talked Valorant, we haven't talked Call of Duty. Schedules are just not really allowing us to cover those things very well at the moment. So we apologize. We're talking about possible solutions there, so don't fret. In the meantime, please join our Discord if you're not already in there. Here's a link in chat for you, if I actually do it right, to come hang out with us. And follow us on Twitter also, because that's the most. That's where most of our information will go out. So, really appreciate everybody. Thank you, Anonymous, whoever you are, for the insane amount of generosity that you've displayed, like over the past entire month, even more.
We appreciate it.
We appreciate it. It's really fun to see.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you. So that'll do it for tonight. We'll look forward to our last. Oh yes, that sounds good. We're going to look forward to our last regular season weekend, Jordan, before playoffs happen. So
it's gone quick. Here we go.
And until then, we love you and we miss you already.
Take care.
All right, everybody hang around for the raid. Ethan, raid incoming. All right, cool. Stay on. We'll see you in his chat. Everybody, we love